Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. Mildred D. Taylor. Chapter 3, Part 2. At supper, Mama told Big Ma of the Jefferson Davis bus being stuck in the ditch. It's funny, such a wide ditch in one day. I didn't even notice the beginning of it this morning. Did you, children? No, we chorused. You didn't fall in it, did you? We jumped into the bank when we thought the bus would be coming, said Stacy truthfully. Well, good for you, approved Mama. If that bus hadn't been there when I came along, I'd probably have fallen in myself. The boys and I looked at each other. We hadn't thought about that. How'd you get across, Mama? Stacy asked. Somebody decided to put a board across the washout. They gonna haul that bus out of there tonight? Big Ma inquired. No, ma'am, said Mama. I heard Mr. Granger telling Ted Grimes, the bus driver, that they won't be able to get it out until after the rain stops and it dries up a bit. It's just too muddy now. We put our hands to our mouths to hide our happy grins. I even made a secret wish that it would rain until Christmas. Mama smiled. I'm glad no one was hurt. Could have been too with such a deep ditch, but I'm also rather glad it happened. Big Ma exclaimed. Mary? Well, I am, Mama said defiantly, smiling smugly to herself and looking very much like a young girl. I really am. Big Ma began to grin. You know something? I am too. Then all of us began to laugh, deliciously happy. Later that evening, the boys and I sat at the study table in Mama and Papa's room, attempting to concentrate on our lessons, but none of us could succeed for more than a couple minutes without letting out a triumphant giggle. More than once, Mama scolded us, telling us to get down to business. Each time she did, we set our faces into looks of great seriousness, resolved that we would be adult about the matter and not gloat in our own hour of victory. Yet, just one glance at each other, and we were lost, slumping on the table in helpless, contagious laughter. All right, Mama finally said. I don't know what's going on here, but I suppose I'd better do something about it, or you'll never get your work done. It occurred to us that Mama might be preparing to whip us, and we shot each other warning glances. But even that thought couldn't dampen our laughter, now uncontrollable, welling up from the pits of our stomachs and forcing streams of laughter tears down our faces. Stacy, holding his sides, turned to the wall in an attempt to bring himself under control. Little Man put his head under the table, but Christopher John and I, we just doubled up and fell upon the floor. Mama took my arm and pulled me up. Over here, Cassie, she said, directing me to a chair next to the fireplace and behind Big Ma, who was ironing our clothes for the next day. I peeped around Big Ma's long skirts and saw Mama guiding Stacy to her own desk. Then back she went for Little Man, and picking him up bodily, set him in the chair beside her rocker. Christopher John she left alone at the study table. Then she gathered all our study materials and brought them to us along with the look that said she would tolerate no more of this foolishness. With Big Mouth before me, I could see nothing else, and I grew serious enough to complete my arithmetic assignment. When that was finished, I lingered before opening my reader, watching Big Ma as she hung up my iron clothes. As she hung up my iron dress, then placed her heavy iron on a small pile of embers burning in a corner of the fireplace, and picked up a second iron, already warming there. She tested the iron with a tap of her finger and put it back again. While Big Ma waited for the iron to get hot, I could see Mama bending over outspread newspaper, scraping the dried mud off the old field shoes of Papa's, which she wore daily, stuffed with wads of newspaper over her own shoes to protect them from the mud and rain. Little Man beside her was deep into his first grade reader, his eyebrows furrowed in concentration. Ever since Mama had bought the reader home with the offensive inside cover no longer visible, little man had accepted the book as a necessary tool for passing the first grade. But he took no pride in it. Looking up, he noticed that Big Ma was now preparing to iron his clothes, and he smiled happily. Then his eyes met mine, and silent laughter creased his face. I muffled in a giggle, and Mama looked up. Cassie, you start up again, and I'm sending you to the kitchen to study, she warned. Yes'm, I said, settling back in my chair and beginning to read. I certainly did not want to go in the kitchen. Now that fire no longer burned in the stove, it was cold in there. The room grew, the room grew quiet again, for the earthly humming of Big Ma's rich alto voice, the crackle of the hickory fire, and the patter of the rain on the roof. Engrossed in the mystery, I was startled when the comfortable sounds were shattered by three rapid knocks on the door. Rising quickly, Mama ran to the door and called, "Who is it?" "It's me, Mal," came a man's gravely voice. "Joe Avery." Mama opened, Mama opened the door, and Mr. Avery started dripping into the room. "Why, Brother Avery?" Mama said. "What are you doing out on a night like this? Come on in. Take off your coat and sit by the fire. Stacy, get Mr. Avery a chair." "No," said Mr. Avery, looking rather nervously over his shoulder into the night. "I ain't got but a minute." He stepped far enough into the room so that he could close the door, then nodded to the rest of us. "Evening, Mrs. Caroline. How are you tonight?" "Oh, I do, I reckon," said Big Mouth, still ironing. "How's Miss Fanny?" "Oh, she's fine," he said without dwelling on his wife. "Miss Logan, I come to tell you something. Something important." Mr. Morrison here?" Mama stiffened. "David? You heard something about David?" "Oh, no," replied Mr. Avery hastily. "Ain't heard nothing about your husband, ma'am." Mama regarded him quizzically. It's it's them again. They riding tonight." Mama, her face pale and frightened, glanced back at Big Ma. Big Ma held her iron mid-air. Children," Mama said, I think it's your bedtime." "But Mama," we chorused in protest, wanting to say and hear who was riding. "Hush," Mama said sternly. "I said it was time to go to bed. Now go." Groaning loudly enough to voice our displeasure, but not loudly enough to arouse Mama's anger, we stacked our books upon the study table and started towards the boys' room. "Cassie, I said go to bed. That's not your room." "But Mama, it's cold in there," I pouted. Usually we were allowed to build small fires in the other rooms an hour before bedtime to warm them up. "You'll be warm once you're under them covers. Stacy, take the flashlight with you and the light and the lantern in your room. Cassie, take the lamp from the desk with you." I went back and got the kerosene lamp, then entered my bedroom, leaving the door slightly ajar. "Close that door, Cassie." Immediately the door was closed. I put the lamp on the dresser, then silently slid the latch off the outside door and slipped onto the wet front porch. I crawled to the boys' room, tapping lightly. I whispered, "Hey, let me in." The door creaked open and I darted in. The room was bathed in darkness. "What they say?" I asked. "Shh," came the answer. I crept to the door leading into Mama's room and huddled beside the boys. The rain softened upon the roof and we could hear Mama asking, "But why? Why are they riding? What's happened?" "I don't rightly know," said Mr. Avery, "but y'all knows how they is. Anytime they think we stepping out of our place, they feels they gotta stop us. You know what some of them done to the berries." He paused and then went on bitterly. It don't take but a little of nothing to set them devilish nightmares off. But something must have happened, Big Mouth said. How you know about it? Alls I can tell you, Miss Caroline, is what Fanny Mae heard when she was leaving the Grangers this evening. She just finished cleaning up the supper dishes when Mr. Granger come home with Mr. Grimes, you know, that white school bus driver, the other man, and two other men's. A clap of deafening thunder drowned out Mr. Avery's words. Then the rain quickened and the conversation was lost. I grabbed Stacy's arm. Stacy, they're coming after us. What? Squeaked Little John. Hush, Stacy said harshly. And Cassie, let go. That hurts. Stacy, somebody must have seen us and told on us, I persisted. No, Stacy replied unconvincingly. It couldn't be. Couldn't be, cried Christopher John in a panic. What do you mean it couldn't be? Stacy, said Little Man excitedly. What do you think they're going to do to us? Burn us up? Nothing, Stacy exclaimed, standing up suddenly. Now why don't y'all go to bed like y'all supposed to? We were stunned by his attitude. He sounded like Mama, and I told him so. He collapsed in silence by the door, breathing hard, and although I could not see him, I knew that his face was drawn and that his eyes had taken on a haggard look. I touched his arm lightly. Ain't no call to go blaming yourself, I said. We all done it. But I got us into it, he said listlessly. But we all wanted to do it, I comforted. Not me, denied Christopher John. All I wanted to do was eat my lunch. Shh, hissed Little Man. I could hear him again. I'd better go tell Mr. Morrison, Mr. Avery was saying. He out back? I'll tell him, said Mama. We could hear the side door open and we scrambled up. Cassie, get back in your room, quick, Stacy whispered. They'll probably come check on us now. But what'll we do? Nothing now, Cassie. The men probably won't even come near here. You really believe that? Asked Christopher John hopefully. But shouldn't we tell Mama? I asked. No, we can't never tell nobody, declared Stacy adamantly. Now go on, hurry. Footsteps neared the door. I dashed onto the porch and hastened back into my own room where I jumped under the bed covers with all my clothes still on. Shivering, I pulled the heavy patchwork quilts up to my chin. A few moments later, Big Mama came in, leaving the door to Mama's room open. Knowing that she would be suspicious of such an early surrender to sleep, I sighed softly and making sleepy little sounds turned up to my stomach, careful not to expose my shirt sleeves. Obviously satisfied by my performance, Big Mama tucked the covers more closely around me and smoothed my hair gently. Then she stooped and started fishing for something under our bed. I opened my eyes. Now what the devil was she looking for down there? While she was searching, I heard Mama approaching, and I closed my eyes again. Mama? Stacy, what are you doing up? Let me help. Help with what? With whatever's the matter. Mama was silent a moment. Then she said softly, Thank you, Stacy, but Big Mama and I can handle it. But Papa told me to help you. And you do more than you know. But right now, you could help me most by going back to bed. It's a school day tomorrow. Remember? But Mama, if I need you, I'll call you. I promise. I heard Stacy walk slowly away. Then Mama whispered in the doorway, Cassie asleep? Yeah, honey, Big Ma said. Go on and sit back down. I'll be out in a minute. Then Big Ma stood up and turned down the wick of the kerosene lamp. As she left the room, my eyes popped open and I saw her outlined in the doorway, a rifle in her hands. Then she closed the door and I was left to the darkness. For long minutes, I waited wide awake, wondering what my next move should be. Finally deciding I should again consult with the boys, I swung my legs over the edge of the bed, but immediately had to swing them back again as Big Ma re-entered the room. She passed the bed and pulled a straight backed chair up to the window, parting the curtains so that the blackness of the night mixed with the blackness of the room. She sat without a sound. I heard the door to the boys' room open and close, and I knew that Mama had gone in. I waited for the sound of the door opening again, but it did not come. Soon, the chill of the cotton sheets beneath me began to fade, and as Big Ma's presence lulled me into security, I did not really feel I fell asleep. When I when I awoke, it was still nightly dark. Big Ma, I called. Big Ma, you there? But there was no reply from the chair by the window. Thinking that Big Ma had fallen asleep, I crawled from the bed and felt my way to her chair. She wasn't there. I sighed and now hooted into the night. Hoo hoo, hoo hoo. Quiet now, except for the drip, drap of water falling from the roof. I stood transfixed by the chair, afraid to move. Then I heard a noise on the porch. I could not control my trembling. Again, the noise, this time close to the door, and it occurred to me that it was probably the boys coming to confer with me. No doubt Mama had left them alone, too. Laughing silently to myself, I hurried onto the porch. Stacy, I whispered. Christopher John. There was a sudden movement near the end of the porch, and I headed toward it, feeling along the wall of the house. Little man, hey y'all, stop fooling around and answer me. I crept precariously near the edge of the high porch, my eyes attempting to penetrate the blackness of the night. From below, a scratchy bristliness sprang upon me, and I lost my balance and tumbled with a thud onto the muddy flower bed. I lay paralyzed with fear. Then a long, wet tongue licked my face. Jason? Jason? That you? Our hound dog whined his reply. I hugged him, then instinctively let him go. Was that you all the time? Look what you gone and done, I fussed, thinking of the mess I was in with mud all over me. Jason whined again, and I got up. I started to climb back up onto the porch, but froze as a caravan of headlights appeared suddenly in the east, coming fast along the rain-soaked road like cat eyes in the night. Jason whined loudly, growing skittish as the lights approached, and when they slowed and braked before the house, he slunk beneath the porch. I wanted to follow, but I couldn't. My legs would not move. The lead car swung into the muddy driveway, and a shadowy figure, outlined by the headlights of the car behind him, stepped out. The man walked slowly up the drive. I stopped breathing. The driver of the next car got out, waiting. The first man stopped and stared at the house for several long moments, as if uncertain whether it was the correct destination. Then he shook his head and without a word returned to his car. With a wave of his hand, he sent the other driver back inside, and in less than a minute, the lead car backed into the road and its headlight facing the other cars. Each of the cars used the driveway to turn around, then the caravan sped away as swiftly as it had come, its 7 pairs of rear lights glowing like distant red embers until they were swallowed from view by the Granger forest. Jason began barking now that the danger had passed, but he did not come out. As I reached for the porch to steady myself, there was a sense of quiet movement in the darkness. The moon slid from its dark covers, cloaking the earth in a shadowy white light, and I could see Mr. Morrison, clearly moving silently like a jungle cat from the side of the house to the road, a shotgun in his hand. Feeling sick, I crawled into the porch and crept, trembling, towards the door. Once inside the house, I leaned against the latch while waves of sick terror swept over me. Realizing that I must get into bed before Mama or Big Mama came from the other room, I pulled off my muddy clothes, turning them inside out to wipe the mud from my body, and put on my night clothes. Then I climbed into the softness of the bed. I lay very still for a while, not allowing myself to think. But soon, against my will, the vision of ghostly headlights soaked into my mind, and an uncontrollable trembling racked my body, and it remained until dawn when I fell into a restless sleep.